In the aftermath of Spider-Man No Way Home, despite Tom Holland's statements about not returning as Spider-Man amidst Amy Pascal saying the exact opposite, there is now a newfound, fresh interest in the character, as it looks forward to the future and pretty much fixed any issues detractors have with this particular iteration of the character. But with this bombastic, epic, villain-clad story breaking the multi-villain curse of the Spider-Man movies, where can the movies go now in terms of their villains? Let's talk about it. Okay, so first let's go through the villains we probably won't see. Given the whole fresh take angle, we probably won't see villains we've seen before, so no Vulture, no Mysterio, no Tinkerer, and no Shocker. They've fulfilled their roles in these movies. Same with the Sinister Six for now. While we didn't exactly get the Six in No Way Home, another villain team up right after wouldn't be the most interesting choice. And because of the visuals created by these characters and the recent reminder of the live action originators of them, I really don't see new versions of these characters popping up. We've got the stakes created in the MCU by the Green Goblin. We've got an arc reactor Electro. We don't necessarily need to see new versions of Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Lizard, Sandman, and Electro anytime soon. Now let's get into the villains, which would be pointless to do. It's definitely way too early for someone like Morlun to appear. Carnage would at least need a Venom movie, and we've recently seen him in Venom Let There Be Carnage. Black Cat wouldn't particularly work as a main villain, as for most of her comic life, she's been a minor antagonist / ally. Prowler also falls into the category of while he's been set up in Homecoming, he falls more into the minor antagonist / ally category. In terms of other villains who've been in popular iterations of the Spider-Man mythos, Rhino and Mr. Negative, from their appearances in Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the Spider-Man PS4 game? I don't know, I'm not a gamer. They're way too small for being main villains, even though Mr. Negative would make sense given the new film is effectively adapting Brand New Day. While Hydro Man has been set up,
BuzzFeed says there's a sailor named Morris Bench who was exposed to an experimental underwater generator and got hydro powers.
He's definitely more of a minor villain, and Morbius will be getting his own movie, but I don't see the next movie being a crossover, and Morbius is definitely going to more of an anti-hero role. I think in terms of villains, it'll be someone that has been set up beforehand. In terms of non-setup characters, a team like the Enforcers could definitely work as some minor 1 or 2 scene villain in the movie, especially given their connection to J. Jonah Jameson, who is so far the only big threat we can expect in the possible next installment. I thought I'd also give some room for 3 big characters that could hurt Spider-Man in his new status quo. Jackal could definitely do some damage, especially in the wake of the MCU translating a much maligned story in One More Day, a story which I've personally loved since I was a kid, into box office gold. So turning another badly received story in the Clone Saga into something great might be appealing to Marvel. In the same vein of bringing characters back, I would suggest Hobgoblin in terms of hurting Peter, with Roger Kingsley brainwashing Ned as opposed to him becoming a supervillain out of nowhere. Oh, I don't remember Peter. I guess I'll be a goblin. So my other big pick for big villains that haven't been set up would be Chameleon. You could use him to bring actors back and to hurt Peter in an interesting way given the current status quo. Plus, obviously given the family connection, it could perfectly set up a Kraven sequel. But I might be so in love with this idea because honestly, when I was watching No Way Home and we got to the scene with Peter in Happy's apartment and he's surrounded by villains with his spider sense going off, which is the best scene in the movie, something about the way the scene was shot made me think the reveal was going to be Aunt May was secretly Chameleon, and that would complete the Sinister Six, which, would have been awesome. But whatever, that's just me. So counting all those characters out, there's 4 major villains left: Kraven, Venom, Kingpin, and Scorpion. Kraven will be getting his own movie, and again, I just don't see a crossover happening immediately. It definitely makes sense, and even in terms of the characters we saw in the rift that was open at the end of the movie, Kraven had the most presence on screen. If there was going to be a story that was adapted, obviously to be Kraven's Last Hunt, which has its own minor villain attached to it in Vermin, but I just don't see that darker story coming right with this fresh start. Thematically, the idea of what makes Spider-Man who he is has just been explored as well, so I just don't see it happening. That said, No Way Home was allegedly originally a Kraven story, so he's probably in the cards for the future in some capacity. With Venom, he's been set up in the post-credit scene, and there's definitely a heavy public love for Venom. It's the same love that caused Avi Arad to put consumerism above art in Spider-Man 3, but I digress. The black suit story is definitely a great one, given Peter's suit would definitely need an upgrade, and would really challenge Peter given the fact Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man has previously warned him about how anger consumes a person and how he stopped pulling his punches. So having to deal with that and overcome it without that support system would be a truly liberating Spidey moment. That said, we've had Eddie Brock in his vengeful state in Spider-Man 3, and we've had Eddie the Lethal Protector in the Venom movies, and most people are excited for the Clintar symbiote because of the potential for Agent Venom. And let's be honest, Flash going through all that development is a big leap. Plus, I just don't see them doing Eddie again because the symbiote just left in Eddie Brock in universe. Next up is Kingpin. He's recently come back in Hawkeye. You could justify bringing Daredevil back in a more superhero role, and you can now move Spider-Man needing a mentor story into Spider-Man having a partner. Plus, Spider-Man not being able to do much with his powers against the double threat of Jameson and Fisk is a great place to take it after the entirely powered villain last movie. I think it'd be a really interesting move, except we don't quite know where he's at given the ending of Hawkeye, although he's definitely going to be an Echo. Now here comes my top pick. I believe Scorpion will be the next villain in a Spider-Man movie. Why? He's been set up all the way back in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's a big enough villain to justify the main villain status, and he's the only prior villain worth talking about that wouldn't have been affected by Doctor Strange's spell. But here's the other reason. Matt Gargan can work in tandem with the two other definite MCU villains for Spider-Man. In the comics, Gargan was originally given his suit by J. Jonah Jameson, who has been set up as the big threat for Spider-Man right now. And one of his big claims to fame is as the more monstrous Venom that comes between Eddie and Flash. So given we've just seen Eddie, and we still need Flash to develop more, Gargan is a great pick for Venom. This allows for two villains who have been definitely set up to work in tandem, especially given Venom is a safe bet for a fan-favorite villain. Also, one thing that stood out to me about No Way Home is when the Amazing Spider-Man said he stopped pulling his punches. And this very concept was brought up in the excellent Superior Spider-Man run, where the villainous Doc Ock in Spider-Man's body accidentally broke Scorpion's jaw, and he realized Spider-Man has always been pulling his punches around them. So given that connection, I see the black suit taking over Spider-Man in a film featuring Scorpion as the main villain, and him breaking his jaw, leading to the realization he's gone too far, and the suit eventually finding its way back to Gargan, someone who already hates Spider-Man so much in Homecoming. And I mean, if they gave Vulture and Mysterio some actual presence and they actually made them solid characters, I have total faith in how they translate Scorpion and bring out the truths about the character. Also, I mean, the Thunderbolts and the Dark Avengers are two big things people want right now, and the Mac Gargan Venom is a big part of the Dark Reign roster of those teams. Plus, if they really wanted extra villains, J. Jonah Jameson controlling things would allow for some sort of iteration of the Spider Slayers as well. So I see this movie being about J. Jonah Jameson and Scorpion as the main villains, leading to Scorpion becoming Venom. But there's plenty of ideas. Just before recording this, Superframe also released a pretty solid video with some great ideas pitched. I personally think this would be like the most logical pick for the movie though. But what do y'all think? We getting a trilogy about Cardiac? Let's talk about it in the comments. I've been Shannon McShortle. I'll see y'all around. And remember, with great power comes mediocre videos with mid-tier mic quality. Thwip, motherfucker. I don't know what that was. All these people out here now saying the Amazing Spider-Man movies are cinematic masterpieces. If people start saying that One More Day is a solid comic book story, after I've been fighting through blood and sweat and tears for over a decade about how this story is actually solid, and people just come back now and go like, it was pretty good, I'll be livid. Can we just talk about how Morbius went the route of the New Mutants movie, where it's just like, it just keeps getting pushed up to the point people go like, no, this movie doesn't exist. This movie can't possibly exist. And then eventually it was like, oh, this movie still exists. And you're like, wow, it's been so long since this insane premise was announced. And then they moved it again to April Fool's Day. I don't think the movie exists. I'm gonna die on the hill that this movie doesn't exist. It doesn't even make sense with the lore of the Daily Bugle's there, but also Michael Keaton's Vulture's there, and it looks like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is there. What is happening? I am incredibly excited to see Morbius though, and I will see it the first day it comes out. I am so goddamn excited to see Jared Leto play Morbius. I'm so goddamn excited. Just going back in the edit, apparently it's pronounced Jared Leto.